Of course, there are scholars, there are well-funded scholars, there are world-famous scholars, there are scholars who are very popular, like film stars. And then there are scholars who are in the pursuit of truth. Their love for their profession is not either enamored or tarnished by the pursuit of money or by the pursuit of popularity. And such scholars in today's day and age are very rare. So when we invite Professor Hermann Kulke to the South Asia Institute, it is an opportune moment. He was telling me that he left the institute in 2005, and serendipitously, he is back after 20 years at the very same institute in 2025. It's not true that it would have taken us 20 years to invite him. That's certainly not true. If Corona had not intervened, he would have come back and he would have taught. But a variety of natural medical disasters came in the way. So it took us 20 years to invite him. Now, there's a reason why I say us. It's a very selfish reason. Mm-hmm. And that reason also I learned from Professor Kulke. Of course, Professor Kulke has been visiting the South Asia Institute. He has been delivering lectures in ancient history quite a few times, even after he left the institute. But, and this is something I learned from him, that my department, which is the chair in the modern politics of South Asia, has the unique distinction of having employed him as a lecturer, which was his first job, after he graduated with a doctoral degree from the University of Freiburg. So Hermann came for my Antritt Vorlesung, and then he spent many hours explaining to me the significance of the South Asia Institute, the significance of the Lehrstuhl, the original copy of the dissertation of the first chair of the Lehrstuhl, which is still in my office. And I felt that some kind of an angelic figure has come to bless the chair. So it is a matter of great honor that he has agreed, despite, as you can see, he is not getting any younger, to come and share with us a very, very important part of his research, which is not the first time he's delivering this lecture, but I have read his lecture, and it's a very significant lecture. It is a very significant lecture at a time when most of the world, and that includes Indians, have very little understanding about the origins of our regional traditions. Some people think that India is a Hindu country. Some people think that India is a secular country. Some people think that Hinduism is a certain kind of thing, that it is not. And what you will find in this lecture is that what is being said about Hinduism today is certainly not the way in which the Indian tradition arose. And he will talk about a geography that he knows the best, which is the state of Odisha. I don't want to say anything about his books and his laurels. They are very well known, apart from saying that I'm not sure whether there are two people in the world who were given the Padma Shri and the German Order of Merit at the same time. Unfortunately, we have, I would say, with a certain amount of pathos, that we have not been able to engage him as intensively as we should have. But A, better late than never, and B, something is better than nothing. And therefore, we have the unique opportunity to present to you not only Professor Hermann Kulke, but his most original views about the interaction between tribal culture and what he calls Hindu culture through an understanding of the deities in the feudatory states of Odisha. The floor is yours. Please.
Yes. Thank you very much to all of you for coming here to listen to me. But I'm particularly grateful to Professor Mukherjee for having invited me and giving me the chance to talk again. It was just mentioned, and I must say, only on the way from Kiel to this place, and yeah, with a pleasure to go back to Heidelberg, where I did my second dissertation or whatever this is, when I became professor. It was only then, yesterday, when I was sitting in the train, that it's 20 years that I'm back to Heidelberg, which meant so much for me, for the children also, and my wife, who died some years ago. It is something, an honor, I must say it. It is an honor for me to be invited after 20 years, and I must say, I can't remember that in the time when I was professor or at the university that people were invited after 20 years. This is normally not the case. They have written much, but they are always talking the same stuff, so why to invite them? I'm making a joke. But it is an honor, I must say, to be honored by the invitation, and is a pleasure for me to be back again to Heidelberg. Yeah, then let me say, because this topic which I found is really something which came to my mind only after retirement. It was not completely new, but it showed something which is very peculiar to Odisha, where we had big projects jointly by the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, German Research Council, and Indian institutions. But Odisha is particularly important also in the context of India, because of the subject of the convergence of tribalization and Hinduization, about which I'm going to talk now. This is not totally new or not known in other parts of India, but in Odisha it's an ideal place for study. So let me start. I have problems with my eyes. Odisha and its Odisha and its former dominantly tribal feudal states offer excellent conditions for an analysis of the emergence of kingship ideology under the reciprocal influence of Hinduization and tribalization. Its mountainous tribal hinterland and the fertile deltaic coastal regions comprise two socio-economic zones with distinct cultural political identities. In the tribal hinterland, nearly 24 so-called feudatory states had emerged from processes of tribal and post-tribal state formation since the late medieval period until the British conquest of Orissa in the year 1803. On the other hand, powerful regional kingdoms flourished in the Middle Ages in coastal regions under dominant Brahmanical influence, and their unique temple cities like Puri and Konarka. The cross-cultural encounter and convergence of these two areas in an essentially feature of is an essential feature of Odisha's identity and its regional tradition, culture, and history. Schnebel, one professor recently retired of ethnology at Halle University, summarized the religious and ideological ambiguity and reciprocity of the tribal Hindu encounter. I'm quoting: the royally patronized tribal goddesses developed into liminal being originating from a tribal background. They moved into the fold of Hindu cultures without, and this is important, without, however, becoming completely alienated from the former and not totally absorbed by the latter. In this intermediate state, they were well qualified to bridge the differences between tribal culture and Hindu culture, between the indigenous population and the Hindu kings. They therefore became an important part of the royal cultural policy. Odisha's feudatory states were geographically intermediate states also in the literal sense, between the center of classical North Indian and coastal East Indian. East India. During this world conquest, Hinduization, so to say, in the mid-century, Samudra, the great Buddha king in the 5th century, passed through South Koshara, the border country between Odisha and Chhattisgarh. There he defeated the Raja with the indicative name Tiger King, Vyadaraja, and made all the forest kings, Sarva, Akarika Raja, his feudatories. We shall come again to the Atharika forest states, a feudatory state of Ranapur. It's one of the feudatory states which I want to introduce to you. The archaeologically important post-Gupta sites of Sita Vinci in Kirunja's tribal hinterland are testimonies of the peculiar intermediate stage of Odisha's already centuries before the emergence of the late medieval feudal states. The ritual policy of these little kingdoms in Odisha's hinterland, the tribal hinterland, was shaped by the Confucius ambiguity. On the one hand, the chieftains of the emergent little kingdoms had to gain and strengthen the loyalty of their tribes by promoting their local deities and by accepting and worshipping one of them as their powerful deities, mostly goddesses, Kakuranis, as tutelary deity. This was particularly relevant for those little kings who had gained the chieftaincy as outsiders or by force or consent of the tribes. But on the other hand, the rulers of the emerging tribal little kingdoms sooner or later came under the influence of invited and migrant Brahmins of northern India and their ritual of Hindu kingship ideology. Their influence usually had two consequences. It led to a stepwise emergence of a courtly pantheon of Hindu deities and their rituals, and mostly only after a few generations to the construction of small Hindu temples near the palaces. also meanwhile ruling small kings. But this seemingly far-reaching Brahmanization of kingship ideology and rituals constituted only one, doubtlessly important part of the emergence of the kingship ideology of Odisha's feudatory states. It was complemented and expanded by the inclusion of powerful Takurani goddesses, tribal goddesses, of course, of the local dominant tribes. Their inclusion into the courtly pantheon and rituals was compellingly necessary for the legitimation of royal authority in Odisha's tribal hinterland. But in most cases, the capitals and its palaces were usually at a safe distance of several kilometers away from the sacred spaces of the powerful and also fearful Taturanis. In their inclusion into the courtly rituals was made possible by mobile images, Charati Patimas, which transformed the aboriginally shapeless stone or wooden images into brass images of Durga. Their including and veneration as a tutelary deity and family goddess in the palace was conducted exclusively by the Rajguru, Hindu Rajguru, of course. Their anthropomorphic tribal images and their original sacred space continued instead to be worshipped exclusively by the tribal Devi priests. This prerogative domains even unbroken or remained even unbroken when the Raja and his Rajgu visited their tribal tutelary Takuranis on special occasions like for the Durga Puja. The essential concern of this paper is to present traditionally legendary accounts and historical sources which shed light on the fate and the role of tribal goddesses in emerging kingship ideology of four former feudal states of Odisha. The sources usually royal dynastic chronicles, depict the tribal origin and identity of these Takuranis and their stepwise Hinduization into their integration into courtly rituals. Previous studies largely emphasized their Hinduization either by Brahmanical or royal influence, but both approaches tended to define the process of Brahmanization and Kshatriyization from the perspective of their final destination, the temple and the palace. The worship of a tribal deity as an ideal of devotion in a Hindu temple or by a Charati Pratima as a tutelary deity in the palace displayed Hinduization of tribal deities at the highest level in view of the Hinduization, etc. No, sorry. As will be pointed out, there existed doubtlessly a close ideological relationship between the original motive of the tribal Takuranis and their Charati Patimas in the palace. But the present paper does not intend to question the actual and indeed far-reaching Hinduization of tribal deities in Odisha former feudatory states. Instead, it is intended to underline the convergence of Hinduization and tribalization based on the social-political reciprocity of the legendary account of the emergence of local kingship ideology. In order to accomplish this object, it is sensible to turn back out, to turn our look for a while to the place of origin of tutelary deity goddesses with their original non-Hinduized wooden and stone images in their tribal priests. Visiting these places, their Thakuranis and priests, it becomes comprehensible why the dynasties of all the feudal states of Orissa have, at least until recently, honored and worshipped nearly exclusively their tribal Thakuranis, goddesses, as tutelary deities, despite the existence of Hindu deities and temples at their capitals. But in order to appraise the incredible points of tribal Hindu convergence, it is also essential to contrast the legendary account of powerful tribal tutelary goddesses with the existence of Hindu temples and libraries of Sanskrit manuscripts in the place existing side by side with the Chalantic Patimas of tribal tutelary deities. In the following, the kingship ideology of these four selected feudal states will be depicted each individually in order to give sufficient space for their historical and cultural individuality, which is clearly perceptible already during the short visit at their place of origin and to discover their similarities and differences. But before turning our attention to the tribal tutelary deities of these feudal states, we should refer at least shortly to Jagannath, Odisha's most famous, here it is, Odisha's most famous and the much earlier state, Rashtra Devata, Jagannath, that is Lord of the World, and what is a virtually ideal way by tribal Hindu convergence, the Odisha local tribal deities. What you see here is clearly wonderful, and it is the first and the single really on the article historical point of view, the greatest. It was already early 13th century. So that means that this was created as first such an image already on such a high level shows that for centuries the the convergence of tribal and classical Hindu culture took place, and it was very successful when you see this here. There's nothing better known all over India of a tribal deity on a high level. Sorry, I say I don't want to talk now already much more, but this is such a good example. No better is available. His tribal identity is preserved by his wooden image, Darumurti. In the following, the kingship ideology of four selected feudal states will be depicted each individuality in order to give sufficient space of their historical and cultural individuality, which is clearly perceptible already after a short visit when you go see these things, and they are still available in Odisha. I mentioned it. Odisha's most, yeah, yeah. But before turning our attention to the tribal tutelary deities of four rather recent feudatory states, we should refer at least shortly to Jagannath, Orissa's most famous and much earlier state deity, Rasha Devata. Jagannath, the Lord of the world, embodies in a virtually ideal way the cultural, the tribal Hindu emergence of Odisha's local deities. His tribal identity is preserved in his wooden, of course, he is stone, wooden image, Daru Murti, and by the Daitapati priests in the Puri temple, who are the descendants of Vishwavasu, Jagannath's first legendary tribal devotee in the jungle. We will talk about this about when we come to Ranapur as a first example. Jagannath's tribal origin is perhaps most convincingly preserved in the Navakalebara, new embodiment, the periodical renewal of the Daru Murti after approximately 18 years. And this is always a great festival for Puri and Orissa. As verified by Ancelot Eschmann, it is clearly a Brahmanized form of Odia tribal rituals. Also, what is taking place, what is now of central importance for the cult, religion, belief in Odisha. This, and Ancelot Eschmann was a former participator of our conference, but she died already much too early. And she clearly showed that this is nothing more than a switched over tribal original festival by Hinduization, by the Hindu priest. When it goes really into the temple, the Brahmanical are the most important, of course. But then, when this is, it is still the tribal priests who are there, still there and important. Yeah, on the other hand, Jagannath's cautious kind of tribalization by sustainable preservation of its tribal origin is contrasted by the high degree of Hinduization. It reaches its first high point in the 12th century under the Eastern Ganga dynasty and their construction of the Jagannath temple. And Puri is the second largest Hindu temple of its age in India, and it was in contrast, it was meant a political, ideological contrast to the famous South Indian Chola dynasty. They had already the biggest, largest temple at Tanjore. So it was, and this is so to say, but the outcome in under the Cholas were purely Hindu, high caste Hindu, whereas in Orissa it remained, and no, I'm coming soon to that picture. This is what made for us research, of course, very much in the support of Odia. Young scholars and professors. As an analysis in details by Tripathi, one of our colleagues, who is still alive now, we switched over to Madras, to Chennai. Jagannath's religious and philosophical Hinduization culminated soon in his identification with Vishnu and finally as Krishna. The highest possible level, it was that Jagannath was all of a sudden Krishna. What else could you expect as a Hindu? You are worshipping a tribal deity who has become Krishna. This was fantastic, and it had a great impact on the non-Hindus, the Germans, to have an opportunity to remember this, because before Christianity became the official religion in the 10th, 9th century in Northern Europe, where I am still living, we had very similar problems. As the rulers of the Ganga dynasty and their successors, the Suryavanshi, were praised as lords of the elephants, their kingship ideology was known of Gajapati kingship. King Ananda Bhima III is praised in an inscription as son, Putra of Jagannath, Rudra, Shiva, and Durga. But already 14 years later, in 1230, he claimed to be the son of Jagannath alone, not the others, and to rule under the divine advice of Jagannath. And the Madhalapanji, to his famous chronicle, relates that he dedicated the empire to Jagannatha and to rule as his deputy Rauta. In Konarka, the famous sun temple of his son Narasimha, we find the earliest known sculpture of Jagannath, which you just have seen. There was nothing similar also existing of this mixture of tribal and some classical thing. It was great, and it was, so to say, developed in a region where not only religious competition was, but there was a competition between the powerful Cholas and the opposition kings. And for 2 generations, the opposition kings were ruling even beyond in the south Chennai. So let's now come to Ranpur, and I may not, because I want you also to ask questions. Let me try to show at least 2 possible places where I can explain it in more detail. Ranpur, a small but important feudal state in central Odisha, it is situated on the steep Maninara hill. Here you see it. This is the Maninara hill, and this is the first great Jagannath temple of the feudatory state of the late. It's not very clear. Roughly, let's say 1720. Anyhow. So Ranpur's history and its Ranpur's and its legendary accounts fulfill paradigmatically typical specification of emergent kingship ideology by Hinduization and tribalization. On the one hand, the city of Ranpur distinguishes itself by a maximum degree of Brahmanical dominated royal culture. The Jagannath temple is very clear. It's wonderful. This is Jagannath, pure Hinduized. But it is not pure, because on top of the hill there is, and you will see the pictures also of what happened. Ideologically, this is manifested by the centrality located palace, interconnected by an excellent Jagannath temple. You see it, of the 17th century. These books are also one they colleague member of our project, has analyzed detailed various aspects of systematic town planning and architecture, and he regards Ranapur as a small reproduction of Puri. It is, you can see this, how to say, Stadt plan, city plan. On the other hand, Ranapur's stability borders Maninageswari on the summit of the Maninaga hill. You see it there. Mountain is Odisha's oldest tutelary deity of a feudal state. Its origin can be traced back to the year 599, when she is mentioned in an inscription as a Maninaga Badharaka. It is significant that the same inscription refers to 18 Atavi Rajas, obviously referring to tribal small chieftains. Of course, the Raja of Ranpo had an interest to say, I have 18 colleagues under my rule. And to explain it also this in a religious term. And in 1985, Maninageswari is one of the very powerful and dangerous 8 mother goddesses of Odisha. In 1985, the blood of 3 teenage boys has been offered to her overnight on top of the hill. Her pure Sanskrit name, Lady, what is the name? Lady of Dual Servant, would suggest a sculpture of a Hindu goddess as actually done by people outside Ranapur. Outside Ranapur, we still made the experience 20, 30 years when we began to work. Mostly people of our age. A bit younger, yes, but not of our age, 40, something like that, went up. They were afraid to go on. I had invited the son of the secretary of culture and education. I have forgotten his name, it's not, you can't get in mind. The son with whom I had a good relationship, on halfway up there, he said, Kulke, I'm so sorry, I'm tired, I can't join. He didn't want to go. Absolutely clearly. The 85, what happened to 3 boys was a bit later, but the same age. But her image is a flat stone, a round stone, perhaps. Why not? Can you just go a bit ahead?
Next page.
Yeah, here you see, and you must go back by reading. This is now the end. No, I will read it out what it is. Ranpur's Raja Vamshavali, also the historical text, so to say, traces the origin of Ranpur's dynasty and its tutelary deity back to the time when even Jagannath had not yet been residing in Puri. That is the legend, so to say, which in Ranpur existed, and it is written very well. The chronicle reports that Vishwavasu, the Saropa chief and founder of Ranpur dynasty, according to tradition, and his brother Vishwavasa were the first legendary devotees of the Buddhist image Devata of Jagannath in the nearby forest. But the great king Indradyumna, who is known from other also West Indian legends, Indradyumna came to Odisha in search of Vishnu. He's the story of West, but also now in Orissa, that he heard about the greatness of Jagannath. He wanted to visit Jagannath, coming from West India, Mahanadi down and so weiter, the valley. But the great epic King Indradyumna came to Odisha in search of Vishnu as the Lord of the world, Jagannath. And when he discovered Jagannath's divine wooden image in the forest near Manipur, he removed it and constructed for it the first Jagannath temple at Puri, and thus became the mythological founder of its kind. But the two brothers, Vishwavasa and Vishwavasava, were grieved about the loss of their deity. It was their deity in the nearby jungle. Therefore, Jagannath appeared to Vishwavasa in a dream. He directed him to come now to Puri and to join him in Indradyumna and to become his priest. He became the ancestor of Puri's already mentioned still existing tribal Daigapati in the temple, who played important and in particularly important temple rituals. And it also is known from various traditions at Puri, tribal Vishwavasa was nearest to Jagannath, as he had been the first original devotee of priests. So this is a story which is still to the Daigapati priests in Puri. They claim to be successor long ago of Indradyumna. His brother Vishwavasa, the legendary founder of Nagpur, was now ordered to take the flat stone. It was, in the original legend, it was a wooden flat plate, but it is now always mentioned as a flat stone. It was taken up and worshipped then by him, and then the founder, the other ones, the founder of Puri, of Manipur. And this is, so to say, a very wonderful example how this operates together and on the level of historiography, mythological historiography. And this is so important. It was so important when we were still there. And it is now, I have to blame all of you because I am unable to work really with my handy computer. It is now, it has not come to an end. At least few years ago, when I was also in Odisha, I had a look at the many films which are brought out by the small local dynastic or politically, religiously places about the greatness of their now, how to say, technically, you need not to know Sanskrit for that. Why Sanskrit? You have what I can't do, although once I knew Sanskrit, I forgot everything, as you can imagine. Now, it works still, but on another level. The tribal, to take, to worship goddess Manidagesa on top of the Maninaga hill, whose chronicle interlinked by their legends and in an ideal way, Odisha's regional tradition with the local and tribal rituals, and I should have written here also with the old Indian tradition. India Juna was in Western India a bit known, so it is these levels, tribal, local, constructed history, you may call it, and already well-known all India traditions, which were then, so to say, slightly changed according to local ideas. The tribal element of Ramapur's kingship was further strengthened by accepting Tilamunda, a purely tribal Thakurani, as an additional Isha-devata. Have you another picture? Yeah, this. Let me see whether I. Yeah, perhaps I should talk to make it slowly. We visited once together with Rajguru, the man who helped me, and I would say much he was the great epigraphist of classical Odisha, Satyanarayana Rajguru. He is not alive any longer. I invited him to join us to go to this place in order to have an opportunity to meet a deity. And this then happened can you? Oh, there is it. Now the picture in a nearby temple. It is. It's. I can mix it up. It's not. Well, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I want to see this also, and yes, here, yeah. So we went to a place, and this is. Anyhow, doesn't matter. The name doesn't mean. What I want to show is now, I wanted to go to one of these feudatory states. The name doesn't mean anything more. What I want to say now. And when we reached this place, we were invited by the Raja for a cup of tea. But then he said, better go immediately to our local tribal deity, about 7 kilometers outside, and have a look at, because this morning I have sent my major priests, not Hindus, tribal priests, to take a cow to the Maheshwara temple, the main Mahadiri, sorry, the major great mountain, and sacrifice it there in order to end as soon as possible the Trockenheit, how to translate it. The drought. And this was getting dangerous. And we heard about in Bhubaneswar that in this region the drought is very bad for the people. And then the Raja said, you go there to my private Thakurani tribal deities for whom a small temple was constructed outside. But please a bit far away from where I am staying with my family. And then when we reached there together with Rajguru, who was well known in this region as a famous old man, and then, so to say, He sent us over there and it explained to the tribal priests who were just preparing to take these not stone, the small tree-like, 3 meters high. They were just preparing to take it, no, to leave it in the palace, but the 7 tangas, sadhus, who had been taken up to the hill where then the cow was worshipped and donated, so to say, and to take this and the crown, the silver crown, back to the palace. But when we came, the Rajah told him he was known to these people because he was so famous, and also mentioning, I understood it partly, that I am a German studying Indology. They started again to dress him completely. We had to wait for about minimum 1.5 hours, because it was meant also to worship, to carry, to treat him correctly. And when this was over, we, Raju, also wanted to go back to the king. We had to go in the car for 10 minutes to drive back and telling him what we had seen. And then all of a sudden, we got again Glen's tea, something in the palace, partly outside the palace. And then you can imagine how impressed I and Raju were. We said goodbye. We were just going out of the palace. The moment we were out, a strong rain started. What is that? Everybody of you can think what you like. Or another place is Banti. The Raja of Banti was deposed in 1840 for murder, and his gate was treated by the government, etc., and became part of the district of Qatar. But Banti preserved, survived as a flourishing local town, dominated by the hill with a temple and part of the former fort, which became the capital Banti. So it existed, but under direct British rule, so to say. The Raja were not there any longer, but it doesn't matter, because Banti are situated, on the and so it is one of the youngest and smallest four-born states in the true sense of the word. According to the Banti Itihas of the year 1932, no reliable written and archaeological sources existed at that time of its pre-18th century history. But the Tribalization, the Chachika is her name, as an original stone on top of the hill, is certainly one of Odisha's oldest, still originally preserved tribal deities. And you see it here. That's all. It is now the real tribal royal first deity. There are other Hindu deities, but this is the most important deity for the time being when such takes place. And now it is go back again, doesn't matter. It is now newly, when I was there, but that is already quite 7-8 years ago, a wonderful town around. It looks now better. I wasn't very much pleased. because this is the original, which certainly existed since several hundreds of years. It was worshipped as it is. And you can also, next picture please, there was also a temple near. I don't remember whether I really showed the picture. Yes, I think it does come. Image which is at a really Paka Hindu temple, but in a tribal-like, low, how to say, low caste, I can't say, but caste regarding the art thing. It is, you can't see it very clearly, but it's in original, it doesn't look much more different. But now, yeah, and the other picture yeah, it is, you can't see it very clearly. Outside, on the other side, what I showed just as a more or less tribal Hindu deity. It is Durga, of course. Now, wonderful part of the temple was dedicated and lovely with wooden carvings of the late 19th century. It's new, so it is working. You have the stone, they on top, you have a Durga, which is not a pleasurable picture, but it is absolutely wonderful, meant for worshiping. It is because it is post-tribal. Also, it was Durga. And then on the other side, you can see this here. I have never seen so much drawing, also Schnitzereien, you translate. It is, okay, yeah, let me think. I wonder whether the time is still, I can try to go other examples.
I think
please, because all what I'm going to continue, and that is, of course, it was a great pleasure for me to work on this for several years, to bring all these things together, to show the word convergence of tribalization. I am the first who used it on our level to talk about tribalization. Why tribalization? They were tribes. But the point is that the tribes had a direct impact on the political dimension. You have it for the first time in Puri. Jagannath is a tribal deity, not at all anything else. But it became the state deity, and finally Jagannath reached the highest philosophical, if I may say, philosophical religious level of being worshipped as Krishna. There is in Hinduism nothing possible very high. I mean, we have been talking about Tantra images or something with some of you. Anyhow, now my question, I could continue, but my point is whether you have questions where you want more, or where you also have new problems with what I'm telling, because this was not at all the mode of telling about Jagannath, the year after we have started a new, what is it, Navakaleva, new 18 years subject took place. And this is so marvelous great. We can only observe, but we don't participate. So the point is,
so basically, if you look at it,
in a way entitled to tell too much about it, because we are not part of taking place religiously. only what we can read, and as a mythologist, as long as I know Sanskrit, I'm so to say, what I have to do and what I like to do is really to look at the original sources. Originally, not. Because they are Brahmin, what Brahmins are writing about it. These are not the original, but it is the great chance, and there Odisha is unique, more or less. I mean, we work on that, and we have colleagues who are working in the same line, partly also, if I may be permitted to say, under the influence, because Jagannath was the greatest possible, but never such the idea that there may be a tribalization. It would be, so to say, one should not mention it. This Jagannath tribalization. Okay, yes, it was something in this direction previously, but doesn't matter. But it matters, and therefore it works. And therefore, in Odisha, it's unique. All over India, Rajasthan has tribal deities, but not at all on this level, integrating in the, there was Rajputization is a word, very famous. That, so to say, and of course, finally, under the Mughal Akbar, this is the top level of Rajputization. Rajputization also allowed a mixture of Islam, Muslim, under the power of the dynasty, of course. But it was not Aurangzeb. He destroyed one wonderful temple in Odisha. But, and this has to be mentioned, and I would like to do it, but let me tell you now, it's more clear. Aurangzeb, it was his order to destroy a very important temple in coastal Orissa, not northern from Cuttack. But at the same time, and that is great, the greatest Hindu temple outside the real Hindu centers was in Tirunja. How is it possible? None of us in our project worked on that. How was it possible that this Raja of Tirunja dared to write a temple in the same age when Aurangzeb has just ordered to destroy an excellent temple, northeastern of Cuttack, and also the, how to say, the most important Muslim political influential man at Cuttack, not another name for that time. What did he? Did he allow the Raja of Tirunja to build can you
go to the Tirunja.
Another picture. Yeah, okay, then it will come. You do first the next picture.
This one?
Yeah, please. This is of the same age when Aurangzeb had ordered the destruction of such a temple. How is it possible? And this is not only, so to say, minor corrections work or something going on within Hinduism. It was also part of the political system under the powerful Mughal dynasty. They had to take care of it. Otherwise, I remember I discussed it, and we can maybe we talk now about this. How was it possible that this was built with, as Aurangzeb, who was at that time living permanently in South India, not far away from here. Yeah. He was not any longer just a Rajput over there. No, not a Rajput, a Brahmin near Agra or something.
Yes, he was in Aurangabad.
Sorry?
He was in Aurangabad. In Aurangabad. He was in Aurangabad.
Yes,
In Maharashtra.
yes.
So can you tell us the story of how Man Singh contributed to the Jagannath temple?
Sorry?
You have a story of Man Singh contributing to the Jagannath temple. Man Singh, the general.
Yeah. No, of course. Man Singh was a Hindu after all. He was the most powerful general of, no, what?
Akbar.
Of Akbar, of course, sorry. H is taking its problem with me. Koda is mentioned quite often, I have not yet mentioned. Koda was a small feudatory state where Koda is still there. Somehow they tried, and they have also a long going back to the earlier history of this 18th century, because they came big only in the late
16th century.
1812, the Jagannath temple, Jagannath cult was permitted again.
I see.
I should not, but the point was very clear. Buddha tried, after the Mughal had thrown out the Bengal political power, and it was Akbar, the Muslim.
It was actually Man Singh,
Man Singh,
Man Singh, who was the general of Akbar.
Yes,
He saved the temple.
He saved the temple, but initially it was a problem because Ramachandra of Koda, who just started trying to become great among the Hindu Rajas, the feudatory states, and he was already successful. And then he fought for some time against the Hindu Raja ruling under Akbar. Anyhow, it is what I need to say is it had an impact because Jagannath was not very well known outside Orissa, but Koda Raja succeeded to fight for about a fortnight, nearly 3 weeks, against the Mughals, and he was successful. And that Akbar sent a message to the Hindu fighter against the Ramchandra of Koda, and said, leave him. And it was clear Ramchandra of Koda was accepted by Akbar himself as the top Hindu Raja. The number should be a real Raja, but to have a great power and to be, and then, and I'm writing quite a lot also in my other works, how after the Raja of Koda for 2 generations, not longer, were able to really rebuild. Jagannath temple was not really destroyed, but not in a very good condition. It was rebuilt, and but then another group of Muslim rulers in Bengal came all of a sudden back to power. And then the Raja of Koda had for about 6 or 7 times to fly to forest, to jungles. But Jagannath survived because the Muslims they wanted to control Jagannath, but they wanted to earn from the pilgrimage, and that was quite a lot. So this is a strange thing how religion was part of local, regional, and imperial history. It's really shows. Jagannath, but he was not only he. In other places, it worked more or less on the same level, but in Orissa, the fantastic thing is the existence of a still existing up to the 19th, 20th century and even now, that people have an attachment to tribal entities. Perhaps let me come to a close now, because I want to know whether you have suggestions, whether I am able to answer it, let me see. But time.
We have for 15 minutes.
Sorry?
We have 15 minutes for questions and answers.
Okay.
Yeah.
They kind of it. Thank you. Thank you. No, and am I right to say that what I have shown you, but only partly where it can be without any payment or something, it can be reproduced, but you have then to mention it to your secretary that this could be sent.
No, they have all got a copy of this.
Sorry?
All the people have got one copy of this. We gave it to all the people sitting there.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm thanking you because they are my customers, so to say.
They all have it.
Oh, wonderful. No, then please, I am in a way happy that we have at least a bit time for questions. Because then, and I made already the mistake to start talking about without reading out, because I preferred and then I'm allowed to talk for a longer period than reading it out. So nevertheless, I would be happy if that what I told you inspired you, since you have got the manuscripts with also quite a great number of more photos, then if I succeeded in interesting you that this is something very peculiar about which your people in Orissa could be proud. It's not at all small, because I did my PhD on Nadavata in Chidanman. This was my Chidanman hardness is something that's also the background of my PhD. But there is next to nothing any longer really alive in what was previously Tanjore, the whole region. And I worked a bit, and some others who worked more, is still existing a bit more in the south, but not at all on the level of Odisha in others. So, okay, then,
We can have questions.
I am glad to know that you received these pictures, what I have written. You need not to take care of it. Anyhow, thank you very much for allowing me to tell you what was my intention. My intention was not really to read much, but to say to whether reading out or talking to transmit the interest which I participated when I read it. And I was fascinated by it. It's that if I have been able to bring the interest also to you. Okay.
We have a question, Professor Mitra.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the paper. Today, in the triumphalism that we see in the name of Hinduism, needed exactly a touch of Jagannath to bring back syncretism. Thank you for the paper. Your lecture is a double homecoming. In the old campus, we had a lot of Jagannath.
Yeah.
The new campus didn't quite have it. You have brought Jagannath to his home. And I'd like to thank Professor Mukherjee for bringing you home, because in the 20 years that I ran the department, I didn't know that you actually belong to us and not to the history department. Thank you. I have a question in three parts. The first is to question your assertion that Jagannath is unique. The second part is to ask, many big Indian states have fragmented. Bombay, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, but Odisha has stayed together. in spite of a very strong movement from Western Odisha called the Koshala movement.
Yes.
But Odisha didn't break apart.
But
Orissa did not break apart.
yes, yes.
Yeah. The third question is, how is it that Navin Patnaik, who made Jagannath the big argument of his campaign, cleaned up the area around the temple, lost to the BJP? So why did Jagannath not work for him? Now, this is a very complicated question. We actually need a one-day workshop to work on all of them. I'll say only one thing before I sit down. You have talked about the Tantric tradition, about Chamunda and Charchika. Now, whatever happened to these goddesses within the cult of Jagannath? Now, I'm a man of Puri. I've grown up in the shadow of Jagannath. As you know, well, you would not, because you would not be allowed in, but you have seen the pictures. Jagannath temple is like a small town. All gods and goddesses who matter have a little place in them. But I was trying to think very hard. I've seen the temple for Lakshmi, but Lakshmi,
yes.
but I've never seen a proper tantric blood-drinking goddess like Charchika or Tarini or even Chamunda. So does syncretism stop at the touch of blood or touch of animal sacrifice? After all, the tribals were not all vegetarians, but once they came to Puri, they all became vegetarians. So are we talking about syncretism or a powerful tradition simply swallowing a less powerful tradition?
Yeah. No, it's exactly what what I wanted to tell to this. You said it with your last few sentences. The greatness of Orissa is that the importance of the tribal background still is existing. It is a question whether it will exist, because I was the last years, as I mentioned, I switched over to Southeast Asia, influence in Southeast Asia, which is in a way a continuation of what I looked in Odisha. But the major point regarding Odisha is now that at least when we came to Odisha in early 40s, early 50s, it was still a secret. What was really Jagannath? It was not something which strange fellows from India, from Germany came and tried to gain great faith that they have been working on it. It was part of the belief system. Really, it was. And one of these pictures which I tell you, let's see, this. This is exactly the photo which I wanted to show now. I don't know whether you can see it. This is Haveli. This is a famous Haveli, which is now, and I realized it only during my last day in Orissa, and that was before when we still could travel around. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was this photo I took in roughly about, I would say, 1700 in the 70s of our last age. In the 70s, I took photos. I was allowed to take photos like this. As a Brahmin, of course, it's not a Brahmin. It's a Canadian. It was a tribal man who was in charge of worshipping, and it was one big joint family who was also the owner of the Kyoja major Taveli temple, which is now completely rebuilt new. But yeah, this is here. You see, Taveli, in a way, and I will show later on my last pictures, which are here, Tagada. But it was, so to say, it was not, so to say, kept slowly, not to become important. Here in Kyoja, because it was out about 10 kilometers from Kyoja capital, where it was a powerful dynasty under the rule. And the first picture which I showed already, yeah, the Jagannath temple and the greatest Befestigung. I mean, buildings to fight against the tribals. Anyhow, now what I mean to say again is, in connection what you say, what makes the greatness of Odisha so interesting, fascinating is that from a certain period onwards, already in the 599, I'm told, the first time that a tribal deity is mentioned in Indian history, in Indian epigraphy, and this remained continuously, and the fight between the Cholas and Suryavanshi Gajapatis. Who is greater? Then the temples all of a sudden became the symbol who is greater. And a lot of registration were also there, and that not each and everybody, also South India, were allowed to go to the temple or to participate in special things. It was something that was oriented by still existing the background, the tribal background. And it was partly still working also in the Chola dynasty, but none were as much as in Odisha, at least to my knowledge. And that is the fascinating thing. And Taveli, who has now, can you perhaps, we must be careful?
No, there's one question I want to ask on his behalf, on Professor Mitra's behalf. You know, the last question he said was that, you know, you have deities like Tarini in Kyoja, right?
Yeah.
Now, these are deities where you have animal sacrifices, right? You have a buffalo sacrifice. You have a buffalo sacrifice. You have an animal sacrifice.
Yes.
But his question is that all the mother goddesses in near Puri, near Jagannath temple, there is no animal sacrifice. So his question is that did that area become more Hinduized because there was no animal sacrifice?
Absolutely correct.
And the other question I would raise another point is that if you go to the temple of the mother goddess in Kamakhya, in Kamakhya,
yeah,
in Assam, again there is animal sacrifice, there is buffalo sacrifice. So his question is that did Jagannath and its neighborhood get so Hinduized that what you can see in Kyoja and what you can see in Kamakhya, you are not able to see in Puri around Jagannath anymore?
Around, but even round to and beyond that, I mean, which where now autobahn cars are operating, it is still there. It is, this is in a way supporting that what you said. It was something was great, unique in Odisha, and it was also the Jagannath temple that it came up and is still there. Who's in South India, of course. Tanjore is still sometimes people are moving there, but it has not at all a similar position as Jagannath with the background of Puri. And in the background of Puri, there are no animal sacrifice. But in Rampur, about 70 kilometers away, there was even the sacrifice of three boys. Yeah, this is, it is, but that the sacrifice took place of the boys. I was looking, because it was much later, not many newspapers were available. It is written that this happened, but not what happened to the people who organized it. Someone had to pay something, dedicate some money for it, that this will not happen again. But it was not part. It was not meant to be something against. On the contrary, it was just showing this is the impact of Jagannath. It is awful that this is the case, but therefore this son of the Secretary of Culture at that time in Odisha, he couldn't, I said, I can't climb up. He didn't want to climb up. And this is something which I don't know. In Assam, there should be a region what I once read, where quite similar something, but not so clear.